what is the plan on ground to see that when I remove this subsidy, if I agree with my predecessor to remove this subsidy, this is where we are going to. This is about the 5th month of President Tinubu in office. We're still talking about subsidy delivery, sending hundreds of bags of grain to the states, and the 2 billion naira that we don't know what is being done with it right now, because it's just like releasing money to them, grains, that's maize, rice, and what have you. We don't know who is receiving and who is not receiving. No proper process was put in place to ensure implementation, which is what the Financial Times is saying. And if you look at that from appointments, and we're just talking about Tunji right now, starting off with the strong demand for comprehensive national database, which we felt, okay, put all your energy on that to see how you can navigate that process. We're talking about delivering of passports. You are not, because without the national database, ensuring that the system is well centralized to check some of the excesses, how are we sure that the Oluwole, that's what they call it, right? Passports will not also be everywhere and all of that. But let me bring you in to react to Tinubu seems to be biting more than he can chew. He's got to talk about execution key.
Well, it's difficult to improve upon what the Financial Times has said. I mean,
really?
Yes, that's spot on. I mean, these are things that ought to be done. And it seems to me like a very apt summary of the situation of the Nigerian economy, or so far the way Bola Tinubu as president has, engaged the Nigerian economy. But there's a side to this that I find a little bit worrisome, which is the fact that we now have a situation where the agenda of the government is being set by a foreign institution. I mean, the Financial Times is a London-based newspaper with claims to being international. And quite frankly, it's an international publication. But wouldn't it have been better if this were coming from, say, the Guardian of Lagos, or the Sun newspaper, or possibly Tribune, or maybe Vanguard, or maybe The Nation itself? It could be any of these newspapers. Why is it that it has to be, this has to be done by a foreign newspaper before we take it a little bit seriously? There's a pattern already established here. Remember that the president wouldn't, while he was a candidate for his political party, wouldn't take part in any debates. There were hardly any town hall meetings where he could articulate his policies to Nigerians and then allow Nigerians to interrogate those policies. So, it's understandable now that the Financial Times is saying that the president doesn't articulate his policies properly, doesn't communicate them properly to Nigeria. It's simply because he got to power, because he was allowed to do all this even as a candidate. If he had, done proper engagement with the candidates, he had become used to the idea of explaining policies, explaining programs, explaining actions to those who would be the end users or the end beneficiaries, supposedly, of those programs. But in terms of the content of that editorial, I think it's actually spot on. If you take an issue like the exchange rate, for example, it's true that the government claims that there has been a harmonization, but I don't even think that's even the case, because a few days ago I heard something about 700 and something naira from the CBN, but I know that out there in the streets, it's over 1,000 naira. So we still have that, even though the gap isn't as wide as it was before, but there are two parallel exchange rates running in Nigeria right now. There's the official, the one they call the I&E window, and then there's what you call the black market window. And frankly, you're more likely to find foreign exchange in the black market than through the I&E window. So part of these things are when you look at it, it's easier to make it's easier to make pronouncements. It's more difficult when it gets to the stage of implementation. Yeah, many people celebrated the removal of subsidy and the nature in which it was done. But at the end of the day, what plans did you have for Nigerians? You can't just remove subsidy, which is supposed to be something that protects, like some sort of safety net for the poor and vulnerable, and then you remove it without putting anything in its place. It's likely going to have an impact, and we are seeing the impact right now. The inflation rate has skyrocketed. There are Nigerian homes that can't even afford some basic necessities. That's the impact we are seeing now. And then the Financial Times also talked about the nature of the removal of the CBN governor. There's everything wrong with that. The central bank is an institution. There are legal ways for the removal of its chief executive. It is not done by executive fiat, as we saw the manner in which the removal of the last CBN governor was done.